Hi, this is the voice, Michael Chavello. You're listening to the Premium Oddscast, hosted by leading MMA oddsmaker Nick Kalikas, fight scientist and author of Fightnomics Reed Kuhn, and MMA journalist Brian Hemminger. The absolute best UFC betting info, picks, statistics, and analysis from the most respected authority in mixed martial arts betting, MMAOddsBreaker.com.
Welcome to the Premium Oddscast, presented by 5 Dimes and hosted on MMAOddsBreaker.com. I'm Brian Hemminger, joined today by leading mixed martial arts oddsmaker Nick Kalikas to break down this Saturday's UFC 180 event, which takes place in Mexico City, Mexico. If you're unfamiliar with our format, myself and Nick will be breaking down the fight card from top to bottom, providing extensive analysis and a pick for each fight after doing our film study for the event. Then, fight scientist Reed Kuhn will step in and offer his expansive numerical insight on all bouts with sufficient data. Today, Reed will be able to contribute on 3 total bouts. Now, briefly looking back at our last event, our premium package bets for UFC Fight Night 55 and UFC Fight Night 56 went 3-1 to win 5.035 units overall. And we won our 3.5 unit bet on Ally Quinta, we won our 1.5 unit bet on Sam Alvey, and we won a 2 unit parlay that included Warley Alves with the Lima Ansarov over 2.5 rounds total. We did lose a 3 unit parlay with Colby Covington and Leon Edwards, but our free bet, which was 2 units, also won, that also included the Luke Rockhold with the Lima Ansarov over 2.5 rounds total. Back to the present, UFC 180 features an 11-bout card in total and will be aired on UFC Fight Pass, Fox Sports 1, and pay-per-view this Saturday night. Let's dive right in. Now, kicking off the preliminary card on Fight Pass is a bantamweight bout between Marco Beltran, who is 5-4, taking on Marlon Vera, who is 6-1-1. Now, Nick, where did you open this fight, and how's the public shifted things so far?
I opened Vera minus 270, the comeback on Beltran plus 190. All lines, by the way, courtesy of 5dimes.eu. And right now, looking at the line, it just tightened up a little bit, so not a ton of early action coming in. Vera is now minus 265, the comeback on Beltran plus 205. So just tighten up margins a little bit, and a lot of split opinions, obviously, and a lot of people are probably don't want to touch this fight, and I don't blame them. I mean, it's kind of a tricky one. Vera, of course, suffered a skin infection on the show before the semifinals, so he wasn't able to compete. But he did score an upkick knockout over Briones in his first round fight, so which was pretty impressive. I mean, the guy definitely has a well-rounded skill set, and you could tell he's got potential, especially at age 21. I think he's only going to continue to improve his overall skill set. He is a southpaw on the feet. He's light on his feet, which is nice. He's got decent movement. He mixes things up well, but nothing really to brag about. He doesn't have a ton of power on his feet, but he does throw some kicks and punches in combinations. Like I said, moves well. He does look for takedowns quite a bit as well, but the problem with him is that bothers me a little bit. He does tend to pull guard at times too, just to get the fight to the floor, which of course can lead to a fighter beating you by just control and top position if you don't sub him out. So the pull and guard thing bothers me a little bit, but as far as Beltran goes, I think he's got one of the easiest opponents on the show here. Beltran wasn't that impressive to me at all. I know he won a controversial decision over Canetti in his first fight, which he really shouldn't have won. And then he lost to Quinones in the semifinals by unanimous decision. For Beltran, he's got kind of wild aggression on the feet, but he's not very technical at all. His ground game is okay, but he can be taken down and controlled on the ground as well. And he's listed as a BJJ fighter. So for me, again, Beltran's just one of these guys that's in there. He doesn't stay active enough. He doesn't necessarily dominate any particular area at all. And I think Vera's probably the better of the two fighters here. It's going to be a close fight, but you got to lean with the fresher, the younger fighter. And Vera, I think he's got more of an overall skill set. He'll look for takedowns, and he'll probably be able to control Beltran. Now, if Vera does that pulling guard stuff and lets Beltran lay on top of him, you never know. We could see a very close, questionable type of decision as well. But I think Vera along the way will find his moments and possibly even finish Beltran. But I think he's going to do enough to edge out a decision. As far as betting goes, I understand why there's not a lot of action on this fight. Vera should be the favorite in this spot, so I'm going to pick him. But, I mean, where the current line is, I don't think there's any value either way on this fight. So I'm going to officially pick Vera to beat Beltran.
Yeah, and I'm going to come in on the same side. Obviously, neither of these guys are that good, but in my opinion, Vera is the better fighter. Beltran is just so limited. Honestly, when looking at the fighters on the show, he was probably in my bottom 2 or 3 in overall skill set. And, I just think he's extremely limited overall. The best thing he's got going for him is he's durable. And that's not a quality that you want to be your best quality. The fact that this guy can go the distance with some tough fighters. But other than that, he really doesn't offer that much. He doesn't have that much power on the feet. He doesn't have very good technical ability on the feet. The best thing he's got going for him is he can take advantage of openings on the ground. Like when Canetti gave up his back, he jumped out his back and took it for about 1 minute. That was about the only minute he won on both fights he competed in combined, but he was able to advance because of a controversial decision. Vera, on the other hand, I think he is a much better fighter. He's light on his feet. He has some nice diverse kicks. He has decent takedowns. But as Nick mentioned, when he doesn't succeed with his takedown attempt, instead of just giving up on it and getting back to his feet, he pulls guard. And from his back, he really doesn't offer that much. Really the only thing he does off of his back from within his guard is he'll go for heel hooks. Obviously he didn't land that one up kick knockout, but those are so few and far between, you can't rely on that. So he needs to either keep this fight standing, where he should have a decent advantage in terms of technical skills, or he needs to get on top and drop some punishment. He cannot afford to just give up on a takedown and fall to his back. So my official pick is going to be Marlon Vera, but I'm not crazy confident in it because of his lack of fight IQ. So keep an eye out for that, but I am going to go with Vera here. Now sticking with the bantamweight division, we have Henry Briones, who is 18-4-1, taking on Guido Canetti, who is 6-2. Now Nick, what's your MMA oddsmaker's perspective on this one?
I opened Briones minus 140, the comeback on Canetti, even money, and right now Briones is minus 125, the comeback on Canetti's minus 105. So again, margins just kind of tighten up a little bit, believe it or not. There is steady two-way action coming in early at 5 dimes. So overall opinion is split on this fight from the bettors. And it is a pick'em type of fight for sure, no doubt about it. Briones is a little bit more of the savvy vet. He's well-rounded. He's been around a while, has that official experience edge over Canetti for sure. Again, he's a well-rounded skill set. He was KO'd by a crazy upkick on the show, which is a little concerning. I mean, he was winning that fight until that point too. But you gotta think his chin might be a little bit suspect, but Canetti was knocked out as well. I'll get to him more in a second here. But again, going back to Briones, he is a solid veteran, experienced everywhere really, but he's not really great anywhere. That's the problem. A lot of these guys on the show are from this season of Tough Latin America. That's it. They have a well-rounded skill set, but they just don't excel in any particular area. Briones does tend to push forward on the feet. He's got solid ground awareness. He does end up scrambling out of bad spots at most times, and does get top control and land some ground and pound. He's a pretty smart fighter. Does tend to gas a little bit, which is a concern. And again, he just is not great at any area. Now, Canetti, on the other hand, I think he's a little bit more powerful. He's a little bit more aggressive overall. Now he did again lose by controversial majority decision, on the show, and he got a point deducted. That's why it was controversial. I think he still should have probably got the nod in that fight, as did he. But again, he was KO'd in his next fight, when he got his shot back onto the show by Perez. So his aggression kind of cost him there a little bit defensively. Now, Canetti is a southpaw. He's listed as a Muay Thai striker, and he does love to throw tons of kicks. I mean, the guy's a kicking machine. That's one of the, best parts of his game offensively for sure. I mean, he throws kicks at will. They're powerful. He throws them in all ranges. So he's a little bit dangerous there for sure. But I think his best attribute is honestly his ground game. He's got some decent takedowns, a decent ground and pound. He does look for the subs as well. So again, this is kind of a coin flip type of fight. But for me, I'm going to slightly lean towards Canetti. I think he's going to be able to do enough to control the pace of the fight and just be a little bit more aggressive of the two. I think he is a little bit more dangerous with his wild aggression with those kicks on the feet as well, so it could lead to some problems for Briones. And I think he's going to end up pulling away with, again, either a late stoppage or possibly the decision win here. So I think at this point, even though Briones has officially more experience, I think Canetti's just a better fighter at this point here. So I'm going to lean with Canetti in this spot.
Yeah, and I'm going to agree. What was really surprising to me was after 23 professional bouts, I really didn't see anything from Briones in terms of stand-up ability that, wowed me. He's very, very limited on the feet. Really where he's at best is when he's on the ground, and his takedowns aren't, anything special, but his scrambling ability is. So if he gets to the ground, he can usually find a way to force a scramble and get on top. He does a very good job of getting to top position. And when he is in top, he has very good ground and pound, and he can hunt for some submissions. So he does a lot of things right when he is on the ground. Getting there is not super easy. He doesn't have the best offensive wrestling, so that is something that you got to be concerned about. What could be beneficial here is that he's facing a guy in Canetti who actually is very aggressive in terms of his stand-up and in his pursuit of the takedowns. He mixes his attack up very well. Canetti likes to, basically he'll lunge forward with some big heavy shots and then transition into the takedown. So that could get him in trouble against Briones if he is sloppy with the takedown and has his weight shifted in one area. Briones could totally sweep him and get on top. But overall, Canetti, I really do think that he has a big striking advantage here. He's extremely aggressive on the feet, has some solid kicking attacks, and he throws these big looping punches. Now, against a very good striker like Alejandro Perez, those looping punches can lead to big counter-strike knockouts. But against Briones, I think that they'll actually be connecting, and they'll basically make Briones very defensive. So I can definitely see Canetti having his way with Briones on the feet, and on the ground it's going to be a lot closer. Canetti should have actually the better takedowns of the two, but Briones is better on the ground. So if Canetti tries to force the takedown, he could get himself in trouble. But if he keeps it standing, I definitely can see Canetti winning this fight. So he is going to be my pick. Now, kicking off the Fox Sports 1 prelims, we have Gabriel Bonitz, who is 16-5, taking on Humberto Brown, who is 4-4. Now, Nick, where did you open this fight, and how's the public shifted things so far?
I opened Bonitz minus 350, the comeback on Brown plus 250. And right now it's actually, again, tightened up in margins. There hasn't been a lot of action coming in. Bonitz is still minus 350. Brown is now plus 260. This is, I think, a fair spot. Bonitz honestly impresses me quite a bit. I think he's one of the better guys from tough Latin America for sure. He's listed as a striker, but again, he has a well-rounded skill set. He's an experienced veteran, stays calm under pressure. That's what I really like about him. Bonitz, he's got a decent fight IQ. He is a southpaw, which is, I think, comes in handy, of course, and makes things interesting on the feet as well. He patiently pushes forward. So he's aggressive, but he has patience when he does it. He picks his spots well, and he's got nice and clean, tight technique. So I think regardless where the fight takes place, with his fight IQ, he's going to give Brown all sorts of problems. Brown, on the other hand, he's a very athletic, strong, grappling-based fighter from Panama. I've seen the guy fight personally in Costa Rica on a few cards in the past before, so I know what you're dealing with Humberto Brown. And the guy definitely has some talent, has some potential. But I think where he's lacking the most is the actual skill level and the technique of everything. So he's got the athleticism, he's got the power, which will cause problems to many fighters. But unfortunately for him, he is fighting a very savvy vet in Bonitz. So I think he's not going to be able to control Bonitz on the ground, and he's going to have problems everywhere the fight takes place. He'll probably get put on his back at times and get beat that way. I think there's a possibility Bonitz actually stops him either by KO or submission. Because Brown has a lot of flaws in his defense. I mean, again, he's got the athleticism, he's got potential, but he has to get in a solid camp and work on all those skills to kind of get the best out of him. And unfortunately, he's lacking that area. So for me, personally, I think it's a no-brainer for Bonitz. I think he should, unless he gets caught with something crazy, he should come away with an easy win here. So my pick officially is Bonitz.
Yeah, and I'm all aboard Bonitz here. He actually had a really impressive performance in the semifinals where he took Morales the distance and really pushed his opponent there. But honestly, Bonitz is just so much more technically sound than Brown. He has a much more well-rounded skill set. Brown, he's 30 years old. He doesn't have the best reaction times. He trains out of Panama. His striking defense is really not very good. He eats a lot of shots, and he's just pretty limited overall. The only thing that, I really think is impressive about him is he can be like a leech. He has that wrestling background, and he will look for takedowns, and he will look to grind you out against the fence. He needs to slow the pace of this fight down. But that's about it. I really don't see a lot of him in terms of striking, in terms of ground and pound, in terms of anything. Really, he's not a UFC caliber fighter, in my opinion, whatsoever. Bonitz, on the other hand, he has a lot of things going for him. His clinch is pretty solid. Cardio is a huge plus for him. He was able to really turn it on in all of his fights. As the fights wore on, he puts a lot of pressure on his opponents. He's very scrappy. And while he's not the most technically sound guy, he will stand in the pocket and really, he's not afraid to throw down with anybody. He showcased a lot of toughness in that semifinal bout against Morales. And I think that this is a guy that has a decent future. So I definitely feel like he is the superior mixed martial artist here, and it'll show as long as he doesn't get taken down and ground out for 3 rounds. He should win relatively easily. So Bonitz will be my pick. Now dropping down to the bantamweight division, we have Jessica Eye, who is 10-2 with 1 no contest, taking on Leslie Smith, who is 7-5-1. Now Nick, what's the MMA oddsmaker's perspective on this one?
Great fight. Really looking forward to this. Jessica I opened -270, the comeback on Leslie Smith, +190. Right now, again, another spot where there hasn't been a ton of action coming in early. It's Jessica I -260, the comeback on Smith is +200. So just a tad more support on the underdog, but nothing really too serious. Man, it is a good fight because Leslie Smith is going to be a little bit longer in this spot. I don't think she's got an official reach advantage. She's got a couple inches of height, of course. But overall, I mean, Leslie Smith is a very aggressive fighter. I mean, she brings it every time she gets in the cage. You know what you expect from her. I mean, she's going to perform and do her best and just kind of put it all out there. But unfortunately for her, I do think Jessica I is a bad matchup. I think Jessica I, her speed, her athleticism overall is going to be the difference here. I think Smith isn't going to be able to kind of dictate the pace and the control Jessica I up against a cage or possibly get takedowns. Jessica I's takedown defense has improved quite a bit. So I think this is going to stay up on the feet. I mean, both of these girls like to bang, and I think what's going to happen here is Jessica I's going to just slowly pick her apart. She's going to do damage. The problem with Leslie Smith is defensively she is flawed a little bit. You could definitely hit her. She absorbs a lot of punishment. She's very tough, hard to stop, hard to finish, of course. But that being said, I think a cumulative damage from Jessica I could definitely mount up. But I think this fight more than likely will hit the scorecards, and we're going to see at least a 29-28 type of decision for Jessica I, if not a 30-27 type of decision across the board. Jessica I has competed with some of the best in the UFC, and she's performed really well. Some controversial decisions, for her and against her, thus far in her career. So she needs to get the W here. And I just think skill set for skill set, the way they match up, this is just a great fight for Jessica I. So she's the better striker. It should stay up on the feet. And I think Jessica I is going to outpoint Leslie Smith.
Yeah, and I completely agree. While Leslie Smith looked amazing in her last fight against Jessamine Duke, Jessamine was a fighter that, kind of went into a defensive shell when Leslie Smith started pouring it on, and she just started unloading on her before she got the TKO victory. That's not going to happen against Jessica I. Jessica I is a very technically sound striker, and she does a lot of things that really can frustrate Leslie Smith. Mainly the jab. As you saw when Leslie Smith fought for the Invicta flyweight title, she got very frustrated by Barb Honchak's lead jab. And in my opinion, Jessica I's jab is significantly better. She does a really good job of just keeping that hand out there, working her reach, and just sticking that hand in her opponent's face and building up some points. And against Leslie Smith, that's the type of thing that can really distract her, because she's the type of fighter that likes to go at a high pace, high volume, constantly moving forward, constantly throwing strikes, and just wearing your opponent down. And she's not going to be able to do that against Jessica I. Jessica I has excellent cardio. She is rock solid in terms of her overall kickboxing game. And Jessica I should be able to mix it up with some more powerful strikes. And I really don't see Leslie Smith ever getting into a rhythm. I really think that Jessica I should be able to shut her down, and especially with how hittable Leslie Smith is, as you saw in both of her fights against Sarah Kaufman, which were just wars. She does not have very good defense. It's pretty much she tries to beat you with overwhelming offense, and I don't think that's going to work against Jessica I. And I can definitely see Jessica I walking away with a pretty easy unanimous decision as long as she's able to stifle Smith's aggression. Now, moving on to the men's Ultimate Fighter finale bantamweight final, we have Alejandro Perez, who is 15-5, taking on Jose Quinones, who is 4-1. Now, Nick, where did you open this fight, and how'd the public ship things so far?
I opened Quinones minus 265 to come back on Perez, plus 185. Right now, a little bit more dog action coming in. Quinones is down to minus 230 to come back on Perez, plus 190. So again, lines have kind of tightened up a little bit, but the books are getting a tad bit more action on the underdog in Perez. I think the early action is probably wrong. I mean, it hasn't been a ton of action yet, so not a ton of, I think, high opinions at least on this fight yet. But I do think the early action is wrong because Quinones, I mean, we'll just say it straight out. They fought, I mean, this will be the third meeting between the two, and Quinones has 2 victories against Perez. One by decision and then one by stoppage. And I believe Perez on the show said it was because of a cut stoppage or something in their first meeting. So this is an interesting matchup, and both guys definitely deserve to make the finals. They've had some good moments on the show for sure. Starting out with Quinones, I think really he's a very solid fighter. I mean, for his resume, if you look at it on paper, of course he's got more fights than the 3-1 listed on his official resume, but he's a pretty good fighter. I mean, for the weight class, he's a little bit long. He's got decent takedown D at times. It's funny because you could put him on his back, but then, and it looks like he's got no takedown defense, but then he manages to scramble up okay and transitions pretty well on the ground. He does have, again, a well-rounded skill set. Seems like he's got decent fight IQ to go along with it. He's got some power. So when he gets top position on the ground, he's got good ground and pound. On the feet, he's got a good clinch game. He's got that kind of kickboxing style where he uses everything in his stand-up game. And he does like to push forward, so he's very aggressive. He moves okay as well. Defensively is a little bit concerned standing. I mean, he keeps his chin up at times and his hands a little bit low. So you'd like to see him be a little bit tighter defensively. But the thing is, I mean, overall, he's got decent cardio and he's just a decent fighter. I mean, so again, he deserves to be in this spot, I think, in the finals against Perez, which Perez is a very decent fighter in his own right. Again, he's another guy with a well-rounded, complete skill set. He's kind of a shorter, stockier type of fighter. He's got some power though. That's one advantage that I think he's going to have over Quinones is the actual pure knockout punching power. Perez definitely, I think, has a little bit more, power to his punch. But that being said, I think he's going to still have difficulties stylistically how these guys match up. He doesn't have a whole lot to offer on the feet, but he does tend to counter-strike pretty decent. Now, again, he lacks kind of the combination striking. That's one thing that bothers me about Perez. He's kind of like more of a one-shot, two-shot type of guy on the feet. But again, he does throw with power, and his knees and elbows are actually okay. Solid ground defense overall. He can be put on his back, but he's another one of these guys that has decent enough ground awareness that he scrambles out of bad spots in most cases. Now, I think he's just going to be a little bit too small, honestly, for Quinones here. I think Quinones is going to be able to put him on the ground at times. He's going to be able to control that position. Even if Perez manages to scramble up to his feet, I think it's still going to still be bad for Perez because it's going to give Quinones some points with the judges. I think on the feet, Quinones' aggression and his more of a combination type of fighter is going to actually outscore Perez as well. So I can see why Quinones actually has a couple wins over Perez because Perez and Quinones really, Perez is kind of an easy matchup for him. It's going to be more competitive, I think, than their previous fight for sure, because Perez has this newfound confidence of making it to the finals on the show. He's coming off an impressive knockout win, of course, as well. So I think Perez is going to kind of have that hunger to redeem himself and get a W over Quinones. But I just think stylistically for him, unfortunately for him, it's just a bad matchup. So this fight's going to be fun. I think we'll see both guys have their moments, but ultimately, I think we're going to see Quinones take a unanimous decision type of nod, or he might again. Another spot where I wouldn't be surprised if we see a finish here and Quinones gets the finish. So I do think Quinones is the better fighter of the two, and I think there is a little bit of upside to Quinones. He has to keep on improving his overall skill set. He's training with better training partners now, training in the U.S. as well. So I think you're going to see some slight improvements from Quinones along the way. So he's going to be my official pick.
Yeah, both these guys are young, with Perez being 25 and Quinones being 23. And while Perez might have a little bit more fight experience, Quinones is overall, I believe, more skilled. Quinones has a much better offensive wrestling game, and on the feet they're about even. They're both very light on their feet. They both have good footwork. They both have power. But obviously, Quinones has fought him twice before and beat him both times. And in their last fight, it was a very decisive victory with a decision where he dropped him multiple times, used his offensive wrestling well, and he just overall beat him in every aspect of the game. Now, Perez, he did look really good on the show. He definitely had his moments, but I do think Quinones is the better overall fighter. Perez did have some trouble in that opening bout due to the wrestling of his opponent, and that was a guy that was basically a flyweight that was just fighting a weight class up. So he had a huge size advantage, and he still had trouble with the wrestling. So if all else fails for this fight, if Quinones isn't getting anything going on the feet, he can always resort to his wrestling. He should have the significant wrestling advantage here, and when he gets in top position, he's pretty solid there. So I really do feel like this is Quinones' fight to lose. He's already beat him twice before. He should be able to do it again. And Quinones is training now at Alliance after training at Greg Jackson. So he's getting some great training, and he's only going to get better from here. So my pick is going to be Jose Quinones to win the bantamweight season of The Ultimate Fighter Latin America. Now, moving up a weight class for the featherweight season finals of Tough Latin America, we have Yair Rodriguez, who is 4-1, taking on Leonardo Morales, who is 5-0. Now, Nick, what's the MMA Oddsmaker's perspective on this one?
Up in Rodriguez minus 185, the comeback on Morales plus 145. And let me say again, as we've talked about in the last fight, I really do believe that these guys are two of the best for sure in the weight class, and this is going to be a pretty fun finale. Rodriguez, I think, is a little bit more impressive. I know Morales has kind of the hype because, I mean, he's looked good with the stand-up game for sure, getting some knockout wins and just kind of picking people apart. Overall, but I think Rodriguez, he's an aggressive, wild fighter. I mean, he throws a lot of crazy techniques on the feet, a lot of spins to go along with it. And I think he's kind of the better overall fighter. Even if he hits the ground, I think Rodriguez is going to have a slight advantages. But getting back to real quick how they break down, I think Rodriguez mixes things up a little bit better. I mean, he's got the kind of funky, unorthodox style on the feet that can be very effective. He's a longer fighter, uses his reach okay. And he does have a pretty decent sub game on the ground, and decent ground awareness to go along with it. So I think he's capable of hitting takedowns when he wants to. Even if he gets put on his back, obviously he can end the fights, by submission that way as well. But I think more so than not, he's going to probably have top control over Morales. So Rodriguez, I think he's a little bit underrated in the ground attack, and I think his stand-up game is going to continue to improve. I mean, the guy's only 21. Both these guys, I believe, are about 21 years old. So that's impressive, and I think they're going to continue to improve overall. But stylistically, I think I favor Rodriguez a little bit here. Morales, on the other hand, is a very dangerous fighter. He's a southpaw. He's got speed and power to go along with it. He loves to throw kicks, which is impressive because he's very accurate with them. I mean, his setup was just outstanding in his fight on the show where he actually was throwing leg kicks, and then ended up going up top and knocking his opponent out. That was very impressive. So he's got decent fight IQ. He's hard to kind of control and get down underground as well. But his striking defense can be a little shaky at times. And there's some question marks, I think, on his ground game. Now, again, he does scramble up a little bit, so he hasn't been kind of controlled or dominated on the ground. But against Rodriguez, I think he's going to be pushed to the max in those areas as well. So I think this is going to be a barn burner. We're going to see both guys again have their moments back and forth. I think if it stays up on the feet for long periods of time, I could see Morales finally kind of finding his groove and making things interesting. And he's got enough knockout power to make life hard for Rodriguez. But again, I think that Rodriguez's length is going to be a little bit difficult for Morales a little bit to adapt to. And I think Rodriguez kind of pushes the higher pace and is a little bit more aggressive. So we could see some clinch work up against the cage. We could see Rodriguez again scramble for takedowns. I think he's definitely motivated. He knows what he has to deal with from the sounds of it on the show with a talented fighter like Morales. But again, overall the action is coming in on the underdog a little bit with Rodriguez actually dropping down to minus 165 now as far as the betting line goes, and Morales is plus 135. So a little bit more support coming in on the dog. I don't blame the people for hitting Morales because he has looked pretty good, but I think Rodriguez is probably going to come away with a win here.
Well, I'm going to be one of those people. I do think that both of these guys have talent, and it's in different areas, but where Morales has his biggest strength is when he is at distance. When he has room to operate, he is absolutely lethal. His leg kicks are disgusting. He does a very good job of mixing up his attack, and don't sleep on his punches either. He has some good pop in his punches. He can drop you for sure. And he throws everything well with combinations. The one thing I am worried about with him is he can get pressured, and when he does, he folds up a little bit. So when he gets pushed against the fence, he isn't able to operate as much, and obviously he didn't get taken down very often on the show, but when he did, he was able to get back to his feet. But again, when he's on his back, when he's against the fence, he's not able to be landing those devastating strikes. Rodriguez, on the other hand, he's a very aggressive fighter. I would say overly aggressive, wild, reckless even at times. But against Morales, it definitely could pay off, because if he constantly puts pressure against him, he could definitely keep Morales from landing those big nasty strikes. But again, of course, by doing that, he could open himself up to a huge counter shot, or he could just walk into something, because he constantly does move forward. Rodriguez overall, I do think he has the better submission game than Morales. We never really did get to see anything on the ground from Morales, while Rodriguez, we did get to see, some of his game on the ground. He does have some skills there, but I do think that on the feet, Morales is clearly the more technical striker. And he does train a little bit at Reign MMA, so he's getting some good training in with some talented guys in the United States, in California. So that should be to his advantage. But I am a little concerned about what happens if Morales gets pressured too much or gets put on his back. But I don't think Rodriguez has that good of a clinch game. I don't think Rodriguez has that good of an top game or wrestling. So I don't really think we're going to be seeing a lot of Morales off of his back. If anything, you're going to see Morales getting forced to fight off of his back feet a little bit, but as long as he uses his footwork properly, and he did a good job of circling away at times in his semifinal bout, I definitely feel like he can get some really impressive strikes rolling. And once he starts to do some damage to those lower legs, it's going to accumulate. So I do think that Morales can pull this off. I'm gonna side with the underdog here, and I'm gonna pick Leonardo Morales. I think that technical striking pays off. Now, kicking off the main card on the pay-per-view, we have a welterweight contest between former UFC fighter making his return, Edgar Garcia, who is 14-3, and against Ultimate Fighter 19 veteran Hector Urbina, who is 16-8. Now, Nick, where did you open this fight, and how has the public shifted things so far?
I opened Garcia minus 270, the comeback on Urbina plus 190, and early support coming in on Urbina. It's down to minus 205 for Garcia. The comeback is plus 165 on Urbina. So getting some love is the underdog here. And I understand in a way because, man, both these guys honestly are hard to depend on. I mean, they both have some potential. Urbina's been around for a long time. Both these guys are veterans of the sport for sure. I mean, obviously this isn't, Garcia's first time under the Zuffa banner. He's back here and he deserves a shot. I mean, he's been pretty impressive, as of late at least. So, but getting back to Urbina impresses me because he's a savvy veteran that's been around for a long time and he's finally getting his opportunity. I was glad to see him have some success. I know he lost to Pendred on the show, but that was a pretty close and hard fought battle that, realistically could have went either way. I mean, he pushed Pendred to the limit there. And again, that was at 185 and both these guys, even though Pendred was a natural 170 guy, so was Urbina. So that was a pretty evenly matched up fight, I think, and Urbina did really well. Again, he's got a ton of experience. That well-rounded skill set. He prefers his wrestling game overall. Urbina goes for takedowns. He has some power on the feet as well. He's just not a huge threat on the feet overall. I think, he's a little bit slow. You can see he's a little bit predictable on the feet at times, but he does have some power. And if he catches you with something, you could definitely be in some trouble. Now as far as fight IQ goes, I think Urbina, again, having all that experience behind him, definitely has solid fight IQ. And he does look for some submissions on the ground as well. So he's got heart, which, really bodes well for him. But the problem with Urbina is he has been knocked out 5 times in his career. So his chin is a little bit suspect and Garcia hits like a truck. I mean, the guy is definitely powerful. He's going to have the stand-up edge in this matchup for sure. Garcia also obviously has a wrestling background to go along with it. So in my opinion, Garcia, regardless where the fight takes place, as long as he doesn't get too sloppy, which Garcia does have a tendency to do at times with his strike defense, he should be able to win this fight. He should be able to get, control of the wrestling game. He should end up on top position if he does get that, advantage there on the ground. If he does get the opportunity, he will end up in top position. On the feet. Again, he throws, with aggression, he throws with power. He's a little bit more technical on the feet. His defense again is a little bit concerning, but you can say that about most of these guys, I guess. And his chin, as far as Garcia goes, he only has one official loss on his resume by KO, but he has been rocked in, several fights, so he has to kind of tighten up that defense. Now, I think overall, Garcia is a little bit more dangerous. I mean, again, he could win this fight by knockout. I think he's submission game. I mean, he's got a nasty guillotine choke. He's, very good on that. So if you shoot in and try to take him down, he could wrap your neck and, end the fight that way as well. So unfortunately for Urbina, I think unless Garcia makes a flaw, like a big, huge mistake, I think Garcia is probably going to win this fight. So I'm going to pick Garcia, but it is tough to bet against both of these guys, or bet on both these guys, I should say, because they do have some fundamental flaws along the way with their defense. So I can understand, I guess, some early dog action coming on Urbina, but I do think it's wrong. I think Garcia is probably going to pull out this fight.
And I agree. Hector Urbina, he's tough and he's very experienced. He's faced a who's who of some pretty solid guys throughout his career, but his biggest problem is when he doesn't get things going in the beginning of the fight. Like, I feel like he falls off a little bit, and you saw that on The Ultimate Fighter season 19 against Cathal Pendred. And honestly, I do think that while neither of these guys should be in the UFC at all, Edgar Garcia at least has fought in the UFC. He has that experience. He has a victory in the WEC way back in the day. And he has been on a little 4-fight win streak, including a decent win over, former top prospect Jordan Smith in his last bout, although it was by split decision. Now, Garcia does have some good pop on the feet. He scored some impressive knockouts throughout his career. Stand-up is definitely his strength, but he does have some wrestling to fall back on, although he primarily uses it defensively. Basically, he likes to stuff takedowns against wrestlers, and when they leave their neck out, he'll go for guillotine chokes. Now, I think Urbina's experienced enough to not leave his neck out for the choke, but I do not think that Urbina's wrestling is good enough. He doesn't just commit to his wrestling enough and drive through that I don't think that he'll be able to take Edgar down repeatedly and keep Garcia down. So, overall, I can see Garcia stifling some takedown attempts, and as long as he doesn't get clipped, because Urbina does have some sneaky power, even if his technique isn't there, as long as Garcia doesn't get clipped, he should be able to outpoint Urbina and maybe even knock him out over the course of the fight. So my pick is going to be Edgar Garcia. I'm not crazy confident about it because honestly, neither of these guys should even be in the UFC right now, but he is my pick. Now, sticking with the welterweight division, we have Augusto Montano, who is 13-1, taking on Chris Heatherly, who is 8-2 with 1 no contest. Now, Nick, what's the MMA oddsmaker's perspective on this one?
Interesting fight for sure. Montano, I opened minus 185. The comeback on Heatherly plus 145. Montano is now minus 240. The comeback on Heatherly plus 180. So a little bit more support coming in on Montano early. Tough one. I mean, Montano definitely is the better fighter overall as far as skill set goes. He's been training at Jackson's camp, which is definitely going to help his overall game improve that much more. And it looks like he is dropping down to 170. He's had most of his fights at 185, so Montano should bring some power down to the 170 division for sure. He's primarily a striker. He's got good boxing, decent footwork, heavy-handed, attacks with combinations, and has power to go along with it. So he's definitely dangerous on the feet, especially in the clinch. I mean, the guy starts kind of throwing some bombs, uses his knees well, elbows, every aspect of the stand-up game he does pretty well, and he throws with some serious intent. He does look also for some takedowns along the way, so his wrestling is actually okay. He's got solid ground and pound. When he does get top position, I mean, you don't want to be underneath this guy for too long because he utilizes his elbows really well. That's one impressive thing about him. And he can be very explosive at times, for sure. So he's a dangerous fighter in a lot of circumstances here, but Heatherly is more of your primarily a grappling based fighter. I mean, he's going to look for his wrestling, which is very solid actually. He's going to look to control the ground game. He's going to look to get top position. He's going to look to hit his sub, and he's a very capable submission artist as well. And his wrestling is probably good enough to make it interesting on Montano, because Montano has been put on his back before in his career, and that seems to be possibly an area of weakness for him, and that's exactly where Heatherly excels. Now, Heatherly, I think, is losing some respect from the overall betting community and maybe the MMA fans in general because of his loss, I think, to Ben Saunders, but stylistically, this is a different matchup for him. Montano is not Ben Saunders as far as overall skill set, and I think Heatherly is going to have some advantages here, which one is going to be clearly the wrestling and two is going to be the submission game. So if Heatherly fights smart, and gets his fight to the floor, maybe takes Montano's back, he can definitely end things. So this is a dangerous fight for Montano, but the concern here for Heatherly is that, man, after the fight gets past round one, he does have a tendency to slow down a little bit. So if people can kind of hang in there and weather the early storm, Heatherly starts to kind of wilt and fold a little bit. If that's the case, Montano's going to finish him. I mean, Heatherly's not going to survive the onslaught Montano's going to throw at him, because if Heatherly has struggles in round two to get the takedowns, it's not going to bode well for him. So all that being said, we also got to consider that Montano's been out for a little bit over a year as far as his last fight goes. So there's some question marks around this fight on all ends, in all aspects. I am going to pick Montano to win because I think he can probably weather the early storm from Heatherly and keep the fight in his realm where he wants to be, and which is actually going to be standing up against even the cage in the clinch and do some damage against Heatherly. But honestly, it's not a real confident pick, because I do think that Heatherly's a very dangerous grappler, and he can definitely pull this fight out. So my official pick is going to be Montano. I'm hoping that he makes a very impressive UFC debut, because the future could be bright for him. I know he's 30 years old, and Heatherly's a younger fighter, but still Montano, with some improvement, he could maybe be a player at 170.
And I agree, while Montano is extremely talented in terms of his offensive striking, especially once he closes the distance, he is limited overall in his skill set. Basically, what Montano likes to do is he likes to back his opponent up towards the fence, and then the second that they really don't have much of an escape route, he absolutely unloads on them with huge strikes in high volume, punches, knees, kicks, elbows, until they just completely wilt. I mean, it's very impressive, that killer instinct that he possesses, because once he turns it on, there's no going back. Like, he just goes and goes and goes until the fight's over. And that's how he's been able to finish every single one of his 13 victories. His one defeat was against a UFC fighter in Sam Alvey. He lost a decision. So if he can't get the finish, I do think he slows down a bit, and he can, get outworked. So that is a concern. The other concern with Montano is if he doesn't close the distance and really work over his opponent on the inside, I think he can be beat on the outside, although that's not going to be a problem in this fight. And he can definitely be beat on the ground. He's already had fights where he's been put in precarious positions on the canvas where he was able to eventually survive and turn it around on him. But his ground game is definitely lacking. And unless he's been spending his entire last year off working on it, I really don't think he's going to have any chance, at least on the ground, against Heatherly. Heatherly, while an undersized welterweight, considering how stocky he is, he's like a bit like a bowling ball of just energy. He will go in there and just try to knock over Montano, take him down, and work him over on the ground. He is a wrestling-focused fighter, does not like to stand and trade much at all. So that is a problem for Montano, because, he loves guys that are willing to exchange with him, and I don't think Heatherly's going to want to exchange with him at all. So unless Montano is able to stuff every takedown, he could be in some trouble here. Heatherly was able to get Ben Saunders down easily, and then of course, obviously it didn't end well for him, but Montano doesn't offer anything in terms of a dangerous guard. So I think if Heatherly gets him down, he's going to be able to keep him down and win rounds and maybe even finish the fight. So this fight's going to entirely boil down to, can Montano keep this fight standing? Can Heatherly get this fight to the ground and keep it down? And how is that dynamic going to play out? Obviously, I don't think this should be a main card fight on a pay-per-view, but it's what it is what it is. And I'm going to go with the underdog here. I do think in a fight like this that I think is close, I usually side with the grappler, especially if they have good offensive wrestling, and Heatherly does have good offensive wrestling. So I think he has enough wrestling to to pull off this upset. So I'm going to pick Chris Heatherly. Now moving on to the featherweight division, we have Ricardo Lamas, who is 14-3, taking on up-and-coming Dennis Bermudez, who is 15-3. Now Nick, where did you open this fight, and how'd the public shift things so far?
I opened Bermudez minus 185, the comeback on Lamas plus 145. Looking over at 5 dimes right now, it's Bermudez minus 180, the comeback on Lamas plus 150. So staying relatively close to where I opened it, just a little bit tighter. But the action did come in on Bermudez early on, and now we're seeing some action back in on Lamas because Bermudez spiked over 2-1 at a certain point. And now again, the dog action on Lamas has things evened out a little bit at the sports book. So the betting public kind of split on this fight. Not surprised because this fight is a great fight. I mean, stylistically, they match up really well. Both of the guys have a solid wrestling background. I think Lamas is a little bit more technical of the two. He's going to have a 4-inch reach advantage on the feet, which could come in handy for sure. I think he's a little bit better as far as BJJ goes. And again, as far as being a more technical striker, Lamas is. But I think Bermudez is a little bit more of a knockout threat on the feet. Does have a lot of power. And as far as wrestling goes, I think he probably has an edge as far as getting the takedowns and maybe controlling Lamas a little bit. It's not going to be an easy task, at all because Lamas I know he's been put on his back in the UFC for sure, but I think Lamas overall has decent takedown defense. So I could see some scrambles back and forth, in the wrestling department, and that should neutralize each other out, but you gotta give the, slight edge to Bermudez in that area. I mean, what he's done recently on his, winning streak is very impressive, but he has had some question marks along the way, no doubt about it. His fight with Holloway is a question mark. That was close. His fight with Grice was a question mark as well. That was pretty close. You gotta give the dogs, in those particular fights a lot of credit, but that being said, I think Lamas is another game fighter, so this fight I'm expecting it to be particularly close as well. As far as betting, I think it's a dog or pass situation, to be honest with you. I am leaning towards Bermudez though, because I think more times than not he is going to be able to do enough to control the fight, the pace of the fight. He's a little bit more aggressive overall. So I do think logic says Bermudez should grind out a decision. As far as chins go, both these guys are a little bit suspect. I mean, Lamas has been KO'd twice, in his career. He's been rocked a little bit more often, than you like to see. And Bermudez the same thing. Bermudez is a little funny though. His chin's a little bit more solid, but he has been rocked several times in fights. He just manages to recover quickly and get back to work. So that's impressive for Bermudez, but still both these guys are a little bit too chinny for my liking. So it's kind of tough for me to lay the juice here, but I do lean Bermudez. I think he is going to probably end up grinding out a decision win here.
Yeah, and what's selling me on Bermudez is not just the fact that he's got a little bit more momentum, it's his activity. He is constantly throwing strikes. He's constantly shooting in for takedowns. He's always putting a ton of pressure on his opponents. And while he did have a couple missteps in the Grice and the Holloway fights, I think that he's actually gotten significantly better as he stepped up in his competition level. I mean, he looked better than ever in his last fight against Clay Guida, which was one of his toughest tests to date. And, he just flew through that one with flying colors. And, man, Dennis Bermudez, I'm just continuously impressed by him. At first I really thought that he was going to be limited because he was just, going to be too one-dimensional, didn't have enough stand-up, but he's been working on it. His stand-up is much better now. I'm not quite convinced it's better technically than Lamas's, because Lamas does mix things up very well. He has some very fancy kicks that he likes to employ, and he can be very unorthodox, but I think that Bermudez can make up for that lack of technique with the pace, because it's going to be a lot more difficult for Lamas to land some of his crazy kicks that he likes to throw if Bermudez is not giving him any space whatsoever. And I really think that the constant pressure of Bermudez is going to be a huge factor in this fight. Lamas is probably a little bit more well-rounded, but Bermudez is just so physical that it's going to make up for it. And I really think that Bermudez is going to be rock solid here, and he's going to pull it off. So I'm all aboard the Bermudez hype train. So Reed, what do the numbers tell us for this one?
Well, you're right. I think one of the biggest difference here is Dennis Bermudez. His pace is very, very high. He's actually abnormally high for the UFC and for that division, for that matter, whereas Ricardo Lamas is below average in his pace. He tends to get outworked by opponents. He averages a slower pace when he's standing up, And surprisingly, his accuracy, at least his power strike accuracy, is not good. Now, his power is pretty good, although he has 2 knockdowns. I think one of them came from a head kick. It's decent on a punch-for-punch level or a strike-for-strike level and higher than Dennis Bermudez, but Bermudez has certainly logged more knockdowns, 5 in his Zuffa tenure. And again, that pace, he's doing it without working people and with better accuracy. Now, I think that gives a slight edge to Bermudez on the feet. It's on the mat probably where he has the bigger advantage. I mean, both these guys have a wrestling base. They're not really submission specialists. But Dennis Bermudez, his stats on the ground have been phenomenal. He is tied for 4th all time with the best takedown defense, at 92%. He controls people for 92% of all of his time on the mat. And he just is dominating on the ground. And that, you compare that offensively, Ricardo Lamas is probably not going to get a takedown on Dennis Bermudez. His takedown success rate is actually below average. His takedown defense is also below average. So I just think it's a bad wrestling matchup, and I think that will probably be the difference here. I think Bermudez probably just grinds out a decision. He mixes in a lot of wrestling, he throws a lot of volume, and barring getting clipped, he probably will grind out the decision here. So, I'm behind Bermudez on this one. Have been for a while, and he's riding a pretty impressive win streak. And a win over the number 4th ranked guy in the division is a huge feather in his cap. It's definitely the biggest win of his career. So he's highly motivated for this one. All
right. Excellent. Thanks, Reed. Now moving up to the welterweight division, we have Jake Ellenberger, who is 29-8 overall, taking on Kelvin Gastelum, who's 10-0. Now, Nick, what's the MMA odds maker's perspective on this one?
Gastelum minus 155 to come back on Ellenberger plus 115. Now we have seen some decent movement in this one. Gastelum is minus 250 right now at the time of the recording. Ellenberger's plus 190. So overall action coming in on Gastelum. I mean, I guess I'm not that surprised because Ellenberger's lost a lot of respect recently. I mean, his loss to Robbie Lawler, which is obviously a respectful loss, but at the same time, how he looked and performed in that fight against Rory McDonald, the fight before that as well. Another loss that he's coming off of, and he didn't do much in that fight. He was a little bit too inactive for everybody's liking. So Ellenberger seems to be on a bit of a decline, and Gastelum is at the point of his career where, he's putting together some solid wins. A lot of people believe that he's going to be a future title contender, and he's right there. I mean, he possibly could be. And with the win over Ellenberger, he'll probably get skyrocketed into that category, and he might eventually get a title shot in what is a very deep welterweight division, obviously. So a big important fight for both guys here, because if Ellenberger does happen to pull off the upset, then he's going to get a lot of that respect back, and he'll be right back in the mix as well. Now, as far as how they match up, I think Gastelum's going to be the more active fighter. I think wrestling is going to be interesting here because Ellenberger's probably the better wrestler of the two. I know his takedown defense is definitely better. He's solid in that aspect. So Gastelum's not going to have an easy route trying to get the fight to the ground. A lot of times, I mean, Gastelum for sure has some power. He's a southpaw, which is going to make things interesting for Ellenberger as well. But he does like to mix things up and get takedowns and control the person on the ground, look for his ground and pound and kind of control the tempo of the fight. Against Ellenberger, I think he could be the aggressor and control the overall tempo of the fight, but as far as getting it to the ground, he's going to struggle. I think Ellenberger might have a better chance actually of putting Gastelum on his back and maybe controlling some of the action there. Gastelum does manage to scramble up pretty well in most cases, so I think that most of this fight should play out up against the cage, standing up a little bit at range, and in that overall category, I think Ellenberger's going to be game enough to be too dangerous, honestly, for Gastelum. I mean, he's got big knockout power, as we all know. He didn't lose that's for sure. If he just gets a little bit more aggressive, and I think Gastelum's pace is going to kind of make Ellenberger be a little bit more aggressive. So this is a dangerous fight, far more dangerous, I think, than what people are thinking in this particular spot. But again, the pace of what Gastelum likes to set, I think, is going to be the difference. This is very similar, in my opinion, to the Bermudez Lamas fight that we were just talking about, but obviously in a higher weight class. Both guys have similar backgrounds. I think as far as technical skill set goes, it's pretty close. I mean, I think that Ellenberger, he doesn't show it very often, but he might have an advantage overall there. But Gastelum, again, he's been on a roll. I think he's kind of the younger, fresher fighter at this point of his career. So logic says he should get the nod But as far as the betting line at minus 250, I do not see any value at that. I think it's dangerous, spot to bet Gastelum in this fight, so it's a dog or pass situation. But my official pick is going to be Gastelum because I think he's going to do just enough to get the nod here.
Yeah, I completely agree that this fight's closer than a lot of people are giving it credit for. Gastelum, these guys are both moving in opposite directions. Obviously, Ellenberger's on the way down, Gastelum is on the rise, but Ellenberger's ranked number 7 in the world for a reason. This is a guy that has some legitimate wins. He's faced a who's who of some of the top guys in the welterweight division in the world. He's beaten several of them. And Gastelum's still a bit untested, although his Rick Story win looks way better now that Rick Story came out and destroyed Gunnar Nelson in his fight. So, that definitely does give some bonus points there to Gastelum for how he handled that Story there. But, even in the Story fight, something that scared me was Story did hurt Gastelum, had him in big trouble at one point, even though he was down on the card. So, Gastelum cannot take Jake Ellenberger lightly because Ellenberger has significantly more power on the feet, in my opinion, than Rick Story. At one point I thought that Ellenberger might have been the hardest puncher, in the welterweight division, before Johnny Hendricks showed up. Now, if Gastelum walks into something, it's gonna hurt and he could get knocked out. And, on the ground, I am a little concerned because even though Gastelum has a strong wrestling base and he's won several fights using his wrestling and he's looked good in doing so, he does have a tendency to get controlled every once in a while. You saw that in the Nico Musoke fight where, he got basically dominated in the first round, had his back taken, but thankfully his submission defense held up. So Ellenberger could potentially use some of that Cornhusker wrestling ability as well. So this is not a walk in the park for Gastelum. What he does have going for him is Gastelum pushes a high pace and he has fantastic conditioning, something that has plagued Ellenberger throughout his career. Neither guy has a very good chin, but experience, you gotta lean Ellenberger as well. The only thing that I'm really going with Gastelum here is I think he's gonna be judge friendly because of his pace and his style and, the conditioning. So as Ellenberger starts to slow down, Gastelum should be able to take over in this fight. So I'm going to go with the young gun here in Gastelum, but this is far from a walk in the park. Now, Reed, what do the numbers tell us for this one?
Well, once again, the numbers are kind of familiar with the last matchup we discussed. You're right. Jake Ellenberger is the harder hitter. He has 8 knockdowns in his UFC career. He punches at a knockdown rate similar to a heavyweight. So he does hit hard. And when it comes to the accuracy, they are very, very similar. Defensively, very, very similar. But you're right. Gastelum has a little bit more judge-friendly style because he does step on the pedal a bit more. Now when it comes to the wrestling, both guys I think have gotten by with some good wrestling, but Ellenberger is definitely at a different level. He's the Dennis Bermudez of this matchup. He's got fantastic takedown defense. He's usually in control on the ground. He doesn't necessarily have to do a lot down there. He's not throwing submissions up everywhere. But just controlling the fight when it hits the mat is a big deal. And Gastelum has proven that in some of his victories, he's used takedowns to secure rounds. So yeah, I'm with you guys. I am surprised that the line is this high. There's a few things that might give Gastelum an edge here. He is the much younger fighter. He's a southpaw. We haven't seen him lose yet, and that's always, something interesting. But the numbers are not a mismatch. And if anything, there's a few advantages that lean towards Ellenberger, that suggest he's, clearly a live dog and maybe an interesting play depending on where the lines settle. And it's also, it's worth pointing out that a 2-fight skid, first of all, win streaks are not really predictive in MMA. And especially when you look at it, Jake Ellenberger was fighting Robbie Lawler, Rory McDonald. These are the top guys in the division. Losing to them is not necessarily a negative. Ellenberger could still be a top 10 guy. So I'm surprised that people are going this big against Ellenberger. I would urge caution in that, in agreement with what you guys said. So I'm interested in where the lines settle on this one.
All right, excellent. Thanks, Reed. Now this takes us to the main event of the evening. We have a heavyweight interim title fight, as Fabricio Werdum, who is 18-5-1 overall, takes on Mark Hunt, who is 10-8-1. Now, Nick, where did you open this fight, and how's the public shifted things so far?
I opened Werdum minus 300, the comeback on Hunt plus 220, and steady action coming in on Werdum as a favorite. Right now the line's minus 420, the comeback plus 335 on Hunt. So everybody, obviously you can tell which way everybody's leaning. And you know what, it's almost kind of a no-brainer, but it's hard to disrespect Hunt and what he's accomplished, especially recently. But you could say that for Werdum as well. Werdum definitely, deserves a title shot in this spot. But getting back to Hunt real quick, I mean, his win over Nelson's a hard guy to knock out, as we all know. He did it. His fight in victory over Antonio Silva was very impressive as well, because Antonio Silva had a lot of advantages in that fight, at least we thought, heading into it. And, we knew that, Hunt obviously had the puncher's chance and Antonio Silva's chin, whatever, but it ended up going to, majority draw. And that's a surprise in itself. But, his ground game and his takedown defense is what's improved the most for Hunt. And as far as standing up goes, I mean, the guy could bang with anybody in the heavyweight division, as we all know. I mean, he had a great war with, JDS, but I mean, JDS was at the top of his game at that time as well, so you gotta give him credit for that. But outside of JDS, I mean, Hunt's handled everybody on the feet. So he's a dangerous guy, he has huge knockout power. Verdum, on the other hand, though, he's not the easiest guy to get rid of. I know that he's got a loss, Verdum does as well, to JDS, but that wasn't the same for Fabricio Werdum, at this point of his career. Verdum's definitely training a lot more serious. I think he's the best version of himself. I mean, he's a veteran. He's been around for a long time. Obviously, both these guys have, but Werdum has been impressive throughout his career. But right now, he's kind of peaking. I know he's getting a little bit older at 37, but as far as skill set goes, I mean, his recent win over Brown was nothing but impressive. I mean, a lot of us were surprised at his striking, including myself, at how impressive and how much work he's put into it. And he was able to do a little bit of damage and, control the tempo of that fight, even on the feet. So Werdum, man, and Hunt, it's going to be a war, really, I think. It all depends on how the fight goes. I think Werdum obviously is going to look to take the fight to the floor more times than not. I think he does get it to the floor at some point, and then once it's on the ground, unfortunately for Hunt, no matter how good he's progressed and how much work he's putting in on the ground, Verdum's a special talent on the ground. I mean, arguably one of the best submission fighters ever in MMA. I mean, especially in the heavyweight division, he's definitely up there. And he's just such a special talent that, I mean, you don't want to spend too much time on the ground with him or you're done. So Werdum, everybody's thinking he's probably going to come in, take Hunt down at some point and get the easy sub. I think that's probably the most realistic scenario here. But if he does not get the takedown, Hunt's going to be game and Hunt's going to be throwing some bombs. Of course, Hunt's taking this fight on short notice at the elevation. Everybody is saying that Hunt's going to probably gas out. I think that's probably accurate to say as well. So Hunt has maybe a round and a half or so to probably finish Werdum. If not, Werdum could kind of wait it out a little bit and get the W there, and eventually even maybe finish Hunt if Hunt does tire down on the feet. I know that's kind of crazy to say as well, but a tired fighter is a completely different fighter. So Werdum has more ways to win this fight. By some miracle, if it does hit the scorecards, I think obviously Werdum has the edge there as well. I doubt this is things going along, obviously. But, so Werdum is probably the side here, but man, laying 3-4 to 1 against a guy like Mark Hunt, you're kind of asking for it. So for me, it's another kind of pass situation here, or you take a small stab at Mark Hunt. But overall, I got to pick Werdum because I think he is at a better state right now, and he's probably going to be the new heavyweight interim champ.
And I completely agree. The main thing that scares me here is that Hunt is taking this fight on short notice, replacing the injured Cain Velasquez, and he's doing it in elevation. We brought it up earlier how Nick mentioned that Hunt probably only has a round and a half or so to really get this fight over with, but it might even be less than that. Hunt has already fought at elevation once in his career in the UFC when he faced Ben Rothwell in Denver, and that fight was ugly. It was really slow paced. They both tired out. It just was not a very pretty performance. Although Hunt did walk away with a decision victory, if he goes into this fight with that same mindset, especially at short notice, I just don't see it happening. Verdum's been training in Mexico in elevation for at least 2 months now. Like, he is incredibly prepared for this fight, and Hunt is not. So that is the number one factor here. But not counting the elevation, still, skill for skill, this is Werdum's fight to lose. He's improved so much in the stand-up that he should be able to hold his own with Hunt long enough to set up a takedown without getting knocked out. Although it is a little scary because Werdum has been dropped, he has been hurt and rocked and knocked out on the feet before. So he's going to have to be careful there and also be careful when he shoots in for takedowns because Hunt is a master of timing and his counterpunching is just perfect. One thing also is Werdum can't get sloppy with his ground game. Roy Nelson, he jumped on Mark Hunt's back and Hunt has improved enough that he was able to shake him off and get back to standing. So if Werdum gets Hunt to the ground, he has to stay tight to him and really work him over, because you just do not want to give him space to try to scramble back to his feet because he might be able to do it. But again, this is still Mark Hunt, and he did have that brutal stretch in his career where he got submitted 5 times in the first round, all by arm submissions. So, if Werdum gets him to the ground and really starts attacking him, then I don't see how Mark Hunt is going to be able to escape it. And, basically for me, he needs a puncher's chance and probably an early puncher's chance because if he doesn't knock Werdum out in the first 2 rounds, the elevation, the conditioning, the short notice, it's all going to be a huge factor. So my pick is going to be Fabricio Werdum. Now, Reed, what do the numbers tell us for this one?
Well, you're right about a lot of those things. I mean, Fabricio Werdum is certainly probably the biggest submission threat in the heavyweight division. If he sticks around, he'll probably set some records. Frank Mir used to be that guy, but Werdum, that's his game now. And the stats do show it. He has been very good. He's willing to fight anywhere. But when he's on top, he's absolutely dominant. Now, can he get Mark Hunt down? That's the question. I think in the first round, at altitude, the clock is ticking for Mark Hunt. He only has a few minutes to get off those strikes. He's been very, very accurate, very powerful with his hands. He's knocked out much longer, bigger guys. He's done it before. He's pulled off these miracle upsets before, impressively. And Werdum is not a guy who necessarily can take a lot of punches. He's been dropped 4 different times, just in the data set that I have. So he's not going to want to stand and trade. And knowing that Werdum's going to have to push forward on Mark Hunt does open him up to some risk. He's going to have to be really careful in that first round. But once that clock starts ticking, it gets into round 2, Hunt is going to fade at altitude. This is going to be brutal for him. He was not prepared for this. He's going to turn 41 this year. I mean, the odds are definitely stacked against him as the clock ticks. And should this end up on the mat, he is definitely, he's in the shark tank for sure. So the question is, where do the odds go? I mean, these are heavyweights. They're both vulnerable in different ways. I think the intelligent bet is to take some different angles. Fight does not go the distance, or look for some props, Werdum by submission, or even a flyer and Hunt by knockout. I do think that he has a decent chance of pulling that off. It's not big, but I certainly wouldn't want to lay juice 5-1 for Werdum. It's going to be a fun one, and I don't expect it to last very long.
So that'll do it for our full event breakdown for UFC 180. Part 2 of the Premium Oddscast featuring our premium bets will be out Friday night. So stay tuned for that following the weigh-ins if you're an MMAOddsBreaker.com premium member, or sign up for MMA Oddsbreaker Premium if you aren't. If we have a free play to give out, make sure to follow at MMAOB Premium, because that's where we'll post them first. We can also notify you of our free bets via email if you prefer that method. Just send an email to picks@MMAOddsBreaker.com and we'll add you to our free bet mailing list. Also, feel free to like our Premium Oddscast Facebook page. We post articles, show announcements, and plenty of other information there, so you can stay up to date on everything from us if you're interested. Special thanks to our sponsor, 5 Dimes. Good luck, everyone, and hopefully the betting gods are on your side this weekend.